to prioritize self-care in your life. My word. Like,
I mean, yeah, it's a loaded topic. It's a loaded topic because I will tell you in the, darkest days of my caregiving, people with just the kindest hearts and the best intentions would say, well, Erin, what are you doing for you? And I would kind of want to drop kick them.
Yeah. At 3 a.m.
It was just another thing on the list. Like I'm working, I'm trying to have a job. I'm trying to keep my husband was also self-employed, like trying to keep his stuff afloat, trying to take care of him after surgery when he was so drugged. He didn't know which way was up. Yeah. All of the things, taking care of the cats, going to the grocery store, cooking meals, all of the regular things.
Sure.
And then to add myself, it was like, that's the first thing to go. Anything I do for me, first thing to go. I paid the price for that. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the trick with that is it's always the first thing to go, but it will bite you later.
Always. My husband and I, we semi joke about it, but this is the sad truth. It has taken me at least twice as long to recover after each one of his surgeries than him.
Wow.
Because he was recovering physically, but it took me so long to recover mentally. Yeah. From all of the processes and everything, the trauma that I carried with it. Sure. The healing from that caregiving trauma has taken me a very, very long time. Wow. And so that's why I do talk a lot about self-care and really, because sometimes it can also feel big. The industry is like a $4.7 billion industry, self-care. And it's not all massages and pedicures and all of those things. And what I really like to remind people is that number one is just a pause. Mm-hmm. It can be sitting in the car in the grocery store parking lot, listening to your one favorite song and crying it out, screaming it out, just nothing, that 3 minutes. It can be bathing. And I always tell people, if you washed your hair, you get extra points. And if you blow dry, you get like triple points. And so it's acknowledging what we're already doing and showing some appreciation for what we're doing and celebrating the little things that we're doing. Like saying like, okay, I got through today. Yeah. I got food in me. I got bathed. We made our appointments. And that acknowledgement and that celebration is also a form of self-care. So it can be teeny tiny things. It doesn't have to be big, grandiose gestures.
Yeah. And I love how you make that so palpable because it is those little things that make a difference that matter. And they do move the needle. They do make you feel better. I just had a guest a couple of weeks ago. She's like, I scream sing. I'm like, I think that's so therapeutic. Screams emotionally and physically because you're screaming. So you're letting some angst out. But it's, but it's also like, you're moving
air drums are the best. When you're screaming, you get a good drum solo and you can punch the steering wheel.
Exactly. And it's kind of, and you get, it just, and you 3 minutes and you're like, okay, I can do that. So it doesn't have to be those big, things. It doesn't have to be a ton of time. It's just taking the time and do something that feels doable, So it feels doable to sit in the parking lot for 3 minutes and do that before I walk in the grocery store, before I go into the house after coming home from a busy day or appointments or like getting your partner and getting that person you're caregiving for, whoever it may be, into the house, getting them settled, going back in the garage and doing it. And whatever it looks like, we're breathing, just taking time to breathe. We don't breathe well when we're stressed and when we're hypervigilant on. So stopping every hour to just, I'm going to breathe, do a breathing exercise for 2 minutes. But it's those little palpable and celebrate the little victories. I that's something I think we can all do better, but especially in those moments. And self-care by definition is those basic needs. It is making sure you're fed, making sure you're drinking enough water, bathing yourself, going to the bathroom. Like, am I making space for that? We get so caught up in caregiving for everything and everybody else. We don't even stop to do that sometimes. And that, start there. Start by making sure you've got your meals, that your blood sugar isn't crashing, that you've had enough that you've had enough water, that, because that's really where start there with your self-care. Make sure you're doing that and then move into those other things that feel nurturing to you. But I love how you put that in, because when your time is taken up like that, you have to find things that feel manageable or you won't do it. And also acknowledging let me sit back and look at the little things I'm already doing. Or if I'm not doing it, that's doable. I can sit down. I have a new thing on my phone, and it's just a new app that's from the latest download of a journal, and it allows you to just turn on your phone and verbally journal into your phone, and just
nice,
and you can just you want to. So I think it's just finding those things that feel doable. Thank you so much for that. I think that's so important.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Confidently setting boundaries. I don't know if there was even room for that for you. So talk to me about your boundaries journey.
So it's interesting because this has come up for me a little more recently because I've recently taken on a caregiving role for my grandparents who are both in their 90s.
Yeah.
My grandma's going to be 94 on Friday and my grandpa's going to be 97 in March.
Wow.
And up until this point, they've really been completely independent.
That's amazing.
And so some things have started coming up that since I have the experience that I do in caregiving, I have been more involved in doctor's appointments and things like that for them.
Sure.
But my father lives here and it's his parents. My sister is here. And so all of a sudden, where before I was what I call a desert tortoise caregiver, I was just the only one and had my shell and did my things. Now there's like this community. We're like the meerkats. I call them the gang of meerkats. And like everybody's there. And so finding that place where I'm both offering a resource and communicating information, accepting help from other people.
Sure. That had to be very foreign for you.
It was very foreign and it's been uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And not in a bad way. Like my dad took them to appointments this morning. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing because it was testing kind of things. And so no information is being exchanged. And then I'll come in the back end and go to the follow-up appointments. And so we're getting a pattern in, but setting those boundaries. Sometimes I've heard just from other caregivers who have so many people involved, sometimes it can be hard to set the boundaries. Say, you know what, we're good. Mm-hmm. And I do have this part. I could use your help with maybe a meal, but I don't need someone to come like sit with me and visit with us. Like we need some quiet time. Yeah. So those kinds of boundaries can be really challenging for some of the people who are used to really big families participating all the time. Yeah. So it's interesting the different facets that show up depending on the kind of caregiver you are and the kind of community that is surrounding you.
Yeah. Well, and that's such an interesting thing too, because it's automatic for people to be like, all right, well, Erin's been through it before, but also you recognize and kind of have probably a good understanding of needs, but then kind of relinquishing control. Like, I know how this is supposed to be done. This needs to be done. Do I feel like I can trust them to do it? And that's so hard.
My husband just said to me, he goes, Erin, you got to let it be messy. And I was like,
I know. This is not,
this messy you speak of. I don't messy. But messy's okay. It's okay. It's about quality of life. And as long as everybody's being taken care of, and it's okay if things get a little bit messy.
Yeah. No, but I think that's such an interesting, you're kind of at a different angle of boundaries, upsetting them because you know it's supposed to be done, but also accepting, letting other people step in, which allows you to have more space and time. It's almost like the reversal is like, okay, I need to accept this, that our family has, an expectation or even a boundary that they all want to be involved and they don't want any, you to have to take on the whole thing. So that's kind of a different, angle to come at. So I think that's really interesting. And just that releasing control is a hard thing when that's a hard thing.
And learning the communication.
Yes.
Learning the communication. How much is too much and which family member needs the bare minimum, and even just methods of communicating. Like example, my grandparents don't text.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine in the 90s. That's probably
can't shoot 97-year-old grandpa text being like, hey, ready for your appointment tomorrow? Like not, and so learning different ways to communicate, which, I mean, that's a lifelong human problem.
Sure.
That's a human condition, communicating with other humans.
Yeah. But even more so with boundaries and, and expectations are even more so, because we can't assume people can just read our minds either. And also understanding I think you hit an important one, having that understanding of who can grasp what information, how much does each person need? Some people can't take in more than, they're like, I don't need everything. Other people are like, you didn't tell me that, so even that balance is tricky and requires a lot of communication about the communication.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for that. Oh, that's a really unique way of thinking of that that I hadn't thought about before. I'm sure this has come up for you, but taking care of our emotional health as much as our physical health. You mentioned after each of your husband's procedures, it took you twice as long each time to recover mentally from that. Talk to me about that journey and just the connection between the mental, because I think when someone's recovering, when they're the person getting taken care of and they're recovering, obviously it's horrible. They're dealing with this really difficult thing. I don't want to minimize that, but they're being taken care of. Their job is literally to sleep and get better. Like there isn't anything else. And
they also get drugs.
Yes,
they get drugs.
They get drugged. They get knocked out. They don't really understand what's going on. They don't understand the time you're putting into it. They don't. It's not their fault, but they just don't have any grasp. So many times when we help our loved ones, there's affirmations. I can't believe you did this for me, and all those things. But when they don't know what you're doing for you, there's not that is not happening in the immediate time and moment, and the toll that takes on you as you keep slogging along. So talk to me about your mental, emotional, physical health journey through all of this.
So I've recently learned more about somatics, and that's coming up in upcoming programs that I'm developing, is to help caregivers better understand that. Because what I've learned is when we take our emotions and we don't let our bodies go through those cycles of fight, flight, and freeze, and we stifle them, that energy is going to end up in our bodies, and it ends up as chronic pain.
Yes.
And all kinds of things that make us ill. And so learning more about feeling the feelings I'm feeling, which can be absolutely terrifying, because for a long time, I felt like if I let myself be scared or angry, it's going to take me over and I'll never come back from it.
Right.
What I learned, and it took me a lot of practice, so I don't expect anybody to jump in and be like, easy peasy, got this. It's a practice, but being able to hold that space and feel that feeling and feel where it lands in your body and physically moving through it. Whether you're angry and you're stomping, whether you're just shaking it out, whether you're doing some yoga, whether you go on a walk, something, even if you just lay in bed and cry and let yourself do the shaking with the crying, to let it move out. I really, truly believe if I had incorporated, if I knew about it, because I didn't know, if I knew about it and was able to incorporate more of that into my experiences, I wouldn't have come out with the PTSD that I did. Because I ended up to the point, Jerry had after his transplant, he had a transplant in 2016, and 2 years later, his cancer came back. And 2 years after that, it came back again.
Jeez.
And I actually think it was the second time it came back. He had a surgery. It was fine. I had talked to the surgeon. I mean, I know everybody like on a first name basis at the hospital. Yeah. And I got off the elevator. It was the same hospital. It was the same floor. It was the same hallway, same everything. And I got off that elevator and my body like shut down. It was like, you're not going down this hall. I started sweating, shaking. My feet didn't want to walk. Like my entire body just freaked out. And I made it to his room and got him, situated. And I sat down and I was like, I think I just had an episode of PTSD. And sweet husband post-surgery, all drugged up, he's like, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that acknowledgement. But it's not like I hadn't even classified caregiving as a trauma.
Right. Oh,
I hadn't even put it there. Like in my mind, trauma was war, kidnapping, rape. Like unless you've been through something that completely horrific, like it somehow didn't count. Yeah. And caregiving, it's a trauma. It is a trauma, and you're living it every single day. Every day.
Thank you for putting a name to that, because I think sometimes too, we don't want to call it a trauma because we feel bad about that. We feel guilty that we've associated this thing that we're doing for this loved one as traumatic. And I think as women, we're even worse about naming that. So I'm so glad you named that. It's very powerful. It's very important. And it is a trauma. I mean, I've had family members, one of my daughters spent 6 weeks with her grandfather this summer as he was going through rehabilitation from a stroke. And so she spent a lot of time with him, and he passed unexpectedly. We thought he was on the right road. And just 5 months after losing my mother-in-law, he passed 6 weeks later. And for her, that was very traumatic, having left him, having felt like she cared well for him. And then all the different experiences. The last book she read has recently been made into a movie that she read to him. And, I think I need to go see this. I need to do this with my sisters but I feel like that's part of the journey that I need to work. I mean, it's just, but you don't want to call it that because you're sitting with this loved one, but it takes a toll. And I'm so glad you put a name to that. It's very important. And trauma is anything that makes you feel like that is difficult. I don't know how to we have to quit putting, it's only traumatic if. No. And what's traumatic for one person isn't necessarily traumatic for another. It doesn't mean it wasn't traumatic for you.
Yeah. Everybody has their own window of tolerance for trauma, and what may today not affect me anymore may have affected me 10 years ago. Yeah. And every experience is also new. And so sometimes I think I got this, and something new comes up and it floors me. Yeah. And I'm like, I thought we'd done this. I thought we got there. Yeah. But it's always a work in process. It's always different layers. And it's that acknowledgement and the awareness of like, okay, this is where I am. Now, where are my tools? This is what I need to do. Yeah. And so that's the thing that I'm creating next is actually a space for caregivers so that they can come. It's going to come out this spring, 2024.
Perfect.
Where they can come and have access to it 24 hours a day for videos, downloads, accountability. If they want that, it'll be available, but it's not mandatory because some people are like, no, I don't want to do this whole support group vibe. That's not for me. But I want people to have access to the resources so that when it hits them and their therapist is off hours.
Yes, it's 3:00 in the morning. You've gotten up to
on Sunday and you can't get them till Tuesday. They have a place to go that they can remind themselves, because I will forget.
Right.
I forget. And when I'm in the middle of it and my brain is spinning, I'm like, I know I'm supposed to do something. What am I supposed to do with myself? And when I'm calm, I know, okay, going for a walk will help me. I know meditating will help me. I know a nice hot, making a cup of tea will help me. But when I'm, I won't remember. And so having that place for people to go to be like, where's my reminder sheet? Okay, this is it.
Yeah. No, that's really important, because you're right. When you're in the moment, your brain isn't working on logical mode. You're in fight, flight, freeze, fawn, whatever, however your body responds to that. And so knowing that you've got this box of tools right here, because you're right. It's the acknowledgement and having the tools. And then that it takes some of the fear away of like, I have some resources now. But it can be unnerving when these things hit you out of nowhere, and these different things bring up different responses. But so just being ready and having those tools, so powerful. And it's awful to think of you having to go through this without those, but also lends power to how much it helps and it matters and can make such a difference, and it's necessary. It's necessary for your own mental, emotional, and physical health. how we can support ourselves and other women in living unapologetically. I mean, so talk to me about your journey with that, of just kind of I don't want to put words in your mouth. Just talk to me about your journey with that.
I feel like really grounding into the knowing that everybody is different. Everybody's different, and really trying to release the judgment. Because especially when people are under the stress of caregiving, they're not going to respond maybe how you would respond. They may not make the same decisions that you and your family would make about care, doctors, any of it. And so holding that compassion for people, and just that message of, no matter what you decide, no matter what you choose, I've got you. Like, I think that's the best way we can support other women. No matter what you choose, I've got you.
I love that. I love the support that shows, the lack of judgment, and just letting people know you're there. That's so powerful. It's so powerful to know you're not alone in something, that someone is there for you, that is ready to catch you. I think, thank you for that. That's really beautiful. And it doesn't have to be these big dramatic things. Like we said earlier, it's just that simple statement of showing up empathetically and letting people know and that you're with, however you need, whatever you need, here I am.
Sometimes it can feel very overwhelming unless somebody specifically asks for advice. People love to jump in and say, hey, I know this person, I know this doctor, I've got this resource. There's a lot of sentences that start with "you should."
The should
are very well-meaning. But when you're going through it and you're trying to sort things out and trying to feel into what's right for you and the person that you're caring for, it can be really, really overwhelming. To receive shoulds.
Yes. And not helpful. Not helpful. That feels judgmental. That feels, and also, especially I think if it's coming from someone who has no idea what your experience is like. But even if they do, like, we've all got our own way we have to walk these things out. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, no, the shoulds and coulds are a problem in a variety of areas of life, but especially, if they didn't ask you for input, think about whether this is something you need to offer up or not. Oh my good. I think that's an important question we can always, and I'm as guilty as anybody. I mean, I have to stop and consider that too.
We've all jumped in, and we get excited because we want to help, and we give a piece of information, and it's always well-intentioned. It's not always laced with judgment, but like, oh, hey, you should,
Yeah.
And if you haven't already talked to this doctor, I know him, and get a second opinion, and just the things. But it's just very sensitive. It's very sensitive.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, maybe I have a thought. Would you like to hear it? It's regarding this. And if they say I don't have the capacity, great, move on.
I have some resources. If you're in a space to receive them, I am here when you need me.
Yeah.
Those kinds of, yeah.
Okay. Perfect. That is a perfect exclamation point to that talking point. The importance of setting and coming back to your why and your values in everything you do. I would imagine, as you were going through this, all of a sudden there's these things that you just couldn't show up for anymore, or had to start showing up for. You probably went both ways. But talk to me about your why and your values journey, and what role that's played, how that's had to be, looked at and assessed through these different seasons.
It's kind of funny because when I wrote my book, I had so many people reviewing and commenting on it, and they were calling it a love story. And it made me so mad. I was like, no, you're missing the points. Like, there's all these like things and tools like to help you in these experiences, so you're not like alone. It's not about love. Dang it. And the more time the book came out in 2022, so we're just a couple years in.
Yeah.
And And I've embraced that love. And that's what one of my identifiers today was heart-led, because if it didn't all come from my heart and didn't come from that place of love, there wouldn't exist. It just wouldn't be there. And that's why we're doing the things we do as caregivers, because we're taking care of people we love.
Right.
And, you know, we want them to heal and we want them to thrive. And so that's why we jump in.
I think it's so interesting that it's that value that led you to like, okay, I want to be a resource. And then when you do something like that and then it's received, it's still a wonderful way, but not the way you intended. I think that's like, hey, that's the point. But then just sit back and like, wait a minute, maybe this is just a really beautiful way of processing and moving through this information. Maybe that's how they need to receive it, or maybe that's how it ended up being because of the love that comes from me. That's how it ended up being communicated. That's what was felt from it. I think that could be so interesting, though. I'm in the process right now. We're getting feedback on a book we've done based on our first 4 seasons, and I'm getting some feedback that was expected, and other it's like, huh? I mean, but yeah, it's like you what? Because I'm sure you had that. Do I need to go back and do this again? They didn't get it. But
no, and then people, you know, everybody gets what they need to get from it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I've really been able to lean into. Like, people are going to see it at the moment they need to see it, and they're going to get what they need to get from it.
Yeah.
So, a firm believer in divine timing of all of the things. So yeah, if you're listening today was your day to hear this particular podcast for whatever reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. I love that fact that, you know, when you put something out in the world, it's from your heart, it's from your values, that it's going to be exactly that. It's going to be received by the people who need to receive it in the way they need to receive it. And I think that's a really great way to put that. But it is kind of funny when you go into thinking one thing, you're like, that is not it. That is not the feedback or even the intent that when you did it, what I wrote. So interesting. Oh my gosh. All right. Thank you for sharing that. That's really, I think that's really important for all of us to remember. Living, this has to be a big one. Living, and you addressed it a little bit earlier, but I mean, people have different ideas about how to do things. Living out of your own expectations versus others' expectations. I think that, you know, and just being able to show up however you need to show up, regardless of anybody else's opinion about it.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just messy. Sometimes it's just messy. Sometimes there are stories in my book, and I share all of the stories that are very embarrassing for me. Some were embarrassing for my husband, but sometimes I showed up in really ugly ways to people. And there's a story I tell in there. I had to take my cat to the vet. It was right in the middle of things. My husband needed surgery. We were moving. We were like all of these things. Yeah. And they extracted a tooth from my cat, and it wasn't anything that was communicated to me. And I lost my mind. I lost my mind. I was yelling at people. They were like, well, you can leave the cat here. And I was like, I'm not leaving the cat with you people. Are you like, I was incensed. I was a crazy person, not what I usually am. And finally, after I kind of calmed down, I'm talking to the receptionist. I was like, oh, you know, and I'm getting ready to move and this, that. And she goes, oh, honey, why didn't you say so? Like, that explains everything that just happened.
Yes, everything that we just experienced is, it really had nothing to do with the directly with that.
To do with the vet or the cat or the cat's tooth or the anything.
Yeah.
And it just goes back to what so many people have talked about, I feel like, for a while, but I feel like we can always use the reminder, is we just don't know what's happening with people.
Yeah.
We just don't know. We don't know all the things. There are so many caregivers out there. Some I would venture to guess maybe don't consider themselves caregivers. And they certainly don't talk about what they're going through. And so your coworkers may be caregivers and you have no idea. Yeah. You may have distant relatives that are going through something and you have no idea. Yeah. And so how people are showing up, or sometimes how they're not showing up, can just be indicative of what they have going on in their own lives. And it's really not doesn't have anything to do with you or me.
Right. Yes. And I think it's just that empathy both ways, giving yourself a ton of grace when that happens and you do that, and just like, okay, alert to myself that maybe I need to take about 3 minutes a day and breathe really good before I go into that. It's because you're like, I don't have room for any more curveballs. I don't need, I'm in the middle of the most giant one right now. This is not the curveball I needed today. And, sometimes it just starts there, like, okay, I just need to go outside and scream because this is just so, just not what I feel like I have the capacity for. So, and I think if you can give yourself grace in that, then it and you've been through those things, it enables you to then give others grace and empathy in that, because I think that's such a good example of things that can happen. My husband was on the phone with one of his employees the other day, and he jokes about the fact that employees over the years, I'm going to brag on him. He's an excellent leader. He's very empathetic. His people know that he cares about their life outside of work. Like, they know that he cares about them as people. And so he's joked over the years. He's like, my employees cry with me. And I'm like, because they feel safe with you. You're a safe place to land. They're not worried about, showing that part of themselves, because you've indicated and showed them by how you lead them that you care about them. And so you have one of those instances the other day, and this woman has been through it. I mean, a car ran through the middle of their house. So they're having to do from just random accident. And I think one of the kids got a broken leg from it. I think they're a multi-generational home, because I think that's something that happens too. When you're a multi-generational home, and a lot of family dynamics and cultures, that's very normal, but that can have its own caregiver load to it that I think these people don't acknowledge, or don't even feel like they can acknowledge, because that's not the language that's been used with them. But I think these resources can be really important for them too. So anyway, this little thing comes up at work that he needed. He's like, oh my God, what did I do? And it's like, it was just the last straw, and the fact that you were able to let her cry it out, that's exactly what she needed in the moment. She just needed to be heard. Yeah, she just needed the space to cry, let it out, let it move through, and be heard and acknowledged. So I think that that's a really important thing to remember in these moments of just knowing that we're all doing the best we can. And we're not always going to hit the mark, and that's okay. If we can learn from it, identify that, and move forward from there, but also extend that to other people. I think that's something I've gotten better at. I used to take everything so personally, and I've learned as I gotten older that when those things happen, it usually has very little to do with you. I mean, you might have said or done something that was that last straw, so to speak, but there's a lot more behind it. And so it's like more important to be like, all right, there's a lot more behind what's going on there. And instead of just adding to the rancor of it, the problem of it, being able to step back and take that in and not add fuel to a fire that's, just be mindful. We're human, and we have a very human experience that is very, very, it's like a roller coaster at times, and just extending that. And I think so thank you for that. I think that's so important. And just the vulnerability, I think, of you sharing those experiences in the book is going to be so powerful for people. It's like, oh my gosh, me too. Thank you. Thank you. And you kind of, allowing that space for grace for yourself. When you realize it happens. And also, if you're on the other end of it, be like, I need to be more mindful when those things happen of what's actually going on versus how I'm perceiving it in the moment. So thank you so much for that. Accepting, you talked about layers earlier, accepting the layered aspects of ourselves, of our lives. These are not things we sign up for when we say, when we get married, we say till death do us part. And the good, and we say we take the good and the bad, all those things. I'm not going to narrate a whole entire wedding, ceremony at this point. But in the moment, we don't really anticipate, oh, well, when I'm in my mid-30s, this giant thing is going to happen. And this is part of what I'm saying yes to. And you're just not thinking about those things in the moment. And those are the layers of life that come at us. And so having to get okay with that, accept that as part of your journey so that you can, have some peace, have some contentment, but that's hard. So talk to me about your layers journey.
It is. And really, I mean, you said the phrase and it made me chuckle because it's what I talk about in one of my presentations I give. I go back to it being a human experience. Caregiving is a human experience. And we take on the different layers. We take on the different aspects. We need to incorporate those pauses and the celebrations and the acknowledgement and do our best to ride it out, and embrace the joys and seek support when we're feeling low. And, but without the layers, life it'd be so boring.
It really would.
It would be so dull without the layers.
It would. And we all could, I think a lot of us say, I could use some boredom in my life. But then again, you got to think about what comes with that. If you take away all of the hard stuff, then you take away the joy that goes along as well. I'm curious about this as I ask this question. So within this time frame, we talk about, not missing the highlights, not missing celebrating the little things. How did you all approach birthdays, anniversaries, those holidays, those celebrations when you were in the midst of all of this?
That is a very interesting question. And I'm having to think about that for a minute. So many of that time is kind of a blur.
Oh, sure. Sometimes you're just trying to get through. And it's a very, when we forgot Christmas in 2015.
The first major surgery my husband had was a liver resection, and they removed a third of his liver.
Wow. And
he had that surgery over the Christmas holiday, and my family was supposed to come, and I told them not to come. And so that year there was no tree. I spent Christmas in the hospital with my husband.
Wow.
Because he was there a couple of days longer than they expected him to be. And at the same time, I think I went in the day after Christmas with garland and I wrapped it around him in the hospital bed and made him hold a mini Christmas tree. I can't. That's who he has as his caregiver.
You found a way to capture that little moment.
And so it was a super hard, scary time. But yeah, we felt, and I for the life of me can't find the picture anywhere because it really is amazing with him in the bed because he couldn't fight me.
Right. You had exactly where you needed him in that moment.
And the look on his face, I've seen this look many, many times. It's just like, Erin, do what you will. And then can we be done with it? Just,
oh, goodness.
And it's just so funny. And so, that was that particular Christmas. All the different holidays and birthdays. I'm trying to remember. He was able after his transplant because he had severe complications post transplant, and we almost lost him. And he went through a whole quarantine period, and he happened to come out of quarantine 2 days before his birthday. So we were like, we get to go to a restaurant.
We're getting out of here.
We get to leave the house and we get to go to a restaurant. And I mean, we're big foodies dining out all the time. So, he was months in quarantine and couldn't leave the house. I could barely leave the house because I didn't want to bring germs home to him.
Sure.
Going to the grocery store was terrifying for me during that time. This was all pre-COVID. So I was
mask and all those things.
Way before. So I was the only one living in that kind of fear, but that's the kind of fear that it was. That it was just me and not the entire globe. It was just me.
Right.
But yeah, we got to go to a restaurant that year. So again, each of these, it's got that shadow, but this bright light as well, that balance, that yin and yang.
No, thank you for sharing that. I think that's important for people to hear of how you can grab those moments and still find joy in the moment and peace in the moment and even some laughter in the moment. This is kind of goes with this, but you talked about a couple times, we almost lost him. How has that affected you in terms of just an anxiety piece and coping. That is very difficult and traumatic. And then you got to come back from. So talk to me about the fear and anxiousness piece that comes with that. And even as you move into a healthier space, how have you coped with that?
Minute by minute and day by day. I already talked a little bit about the PTSD in one specific instance. I mean, I went probably a couple years where, and I know that new moms also know this sensation. If his breathing paused, I would jump up in bed.
Sure.
For a split second. And I would just sit there and go like 1001, 1002. And then he'd breathe. And I go, okay, we're good. And I did that every night for, I don't know how long.
Wow.
I mean, and now he's amazing. And so it's like, stop snoring, roll over. Regular husband, wife.
Yeah, that's the things that we welcome. Like, great, I can push you over and you're snoring. This is where we're supposed to be going at this point in life.
But it's those, it's really minute by minute living through that. There were times, so he contracted what's called graft versus host disease, which is very uncommon in solid organ transplants. And that's when the DNA from the transplanted organ tries to take over the DNA in the recipient's body. And that doesn't work.
No, that doesn't sound like it goes well at all. That doesn't
work at all. And so it took the hospital, because it's so uncommon, less than 2% of solid organ recipients have this happen to them. And of that 2%, 80% of them die.
Oh, goodness.
And so I knew that. My husband did not know that.
Okay.
And so there was that period of time while they were trying to, treat him and everything, that I held that fear for the both of us, because he was healing. He was doing his thing. I wasn't going to share with him all of my medical journal research, because the doctors came and said, hey, these are the statistics. They were kind enough to do that. And for me, it was the right thing to not have anybody verify or deny the data. I'm just like, I have this data from, I literally went to medical journals. I will not just randomly Google things.
Sure.
But I held that. And so it took a toll on me. Would I do it again? I probably would, because that's just the kind of person, that's just kind of who I am.
Yeah.
That's just who I am.
Does it make a difference now knowing that you have tools that you're like, okay, if you're going, if I'm in this scenario again, with whatever scenario, at this time I've got these tools. I need to go out. I need to step out of the room and have a cry, or, take a break.
Absolutely. Like we talked before, I'll let myself feel the fear of it. I will let myself cry. I tested throwing a book the other day, because I was like, something needs to move. What's going to move? And I was like, I'm going to see what happens, how I feel if I throw this book. And I threw it down the hallway, and it was like, okay, it moved. That wasn't my thing. Like, somebody in the support group I talked to were like, no, when I got my diagnosis, I punched a wall. And he's like, I had to fix the wall.
I just created another problem.
So I'm like, I know, I probably should have screamed in a pillow or taken a different route like that. But knowing about like that somatic energy and just kind of moving things and letting myself cry, and knowing I needed to move something and testing different things to see what moved, it helped release it from me. I was able to actually talk to the support group about the experience I had just had. I was able to talk to them about the lessons that I learned from it. So I still had the experience.
Yeah.
But I was able to reach the other side of it much more quickly.
Okay. I thank you for that. And that's really why I asked that, because I think it's important for people that are going through this to hear that, to hear the both and because sometimes you got to step away and do those things. You can't always do it in the moment. It's not always possible, but it's that making that note to yourself of like, this can't stay here. So I gotta create some space for this. But thank you for sharing that.
And just that grace of knowing that it's going to come up. Like, we're not, quote, cured from human feelings.
No,
we're going to have them. They're going to show up in different ways. And it might be sadness. It might be guilt. It might be fear. It might be resentment.
Yeah.
And even the joy, you can feel guilty for feeling joy. You can they compound. And so giving ourselves that space to feel those feelings and let them move, it's such an important tool.
Yeah, I bet that foreboding joy thing can be a real thing, and even just guilt about feeling joy. But talk to me a little bit about the resentment piece. What do you do with that? Because it is, you're especially when they're in states like we talked about earlier, that they don't really know what you're doing for them, and no one else really knows. They're not there with you. And here you are with this person that you love, whoever it may be. In your case, it's your husband, but it could be a sister, a brother, a mom, dad, best friend, whatever the case. Talk to me about that resentment and what you do with that.
I think one of the, if you're already there, the healing of it, I think looks a little bit different.
Okay.
But I think trying to address things and emotions and feelings and adjusting your self-care as it's progressing can help prevent it from latching
into you,
latching in like a parasite. Because then releasing that, coming out of that and addressing those things that led you there is a little bit longer of a path. It's a little bit longer of a path, and it's going to require just a little more effort, a lot more grace, and a lot of forgiveness. And I found mostly that forgiveness is for myself.
Mm-hmm.
For myself. Because maybe my expectations for myself were a little high. Maybe they were a little bit misaligned. Maybe I was judging myself a little bit too much. And so that healing process for the resentment can take a little bit longer. But like I said, if you're working through, I feel like the anger and the guilt as it's coming up, and you realize, you know what, I need somebody to help me. I need to do Instacart every now and then because I can't make it to the grocery store. Maybe I need to ask. Maybe I need to find a therapist. Maybe I need to have another friend to call. Maybe give yourself that space. And
accept the help. I think we have a hard time accepting the help.
And knowing what to ask for. And that's one of the things I want to add to the group too, is like, here's a list of 100 things to ask for, because people would ask me. And on my website, I have a free resource of 10 ways to support a caregiver. And little things like send them a text, make them a playlist, just say hi. Doesn't have to be, nothing has to be really big. But people would ask me, and I was so overwhelmed I couldn't think of what to ask for.
I don't know where to begin.
I would just say, it's fine. It's fine, because I couldn't come up with it. So
thank you for that. I appreciate that. And that's a lot of different things, but it goes with the layers piece. And this is a unique situation, and I wanted to address those and just help people know that there's resources for that, and that they're not the only ones, and that these things come up, and to be, there's no definition or no dictionary or no school to go to navigate this, So I think it's
individual. It's very individual.
Absolutely. In Living Out Feel, finding empowerment, embracing layers, talk to me about how that's affected your relationship with yourself as well as your relationship with others.
I feel like I've been able to offer myself a lot more grace, a lot more forgiveness, a lot more compassion for myself, because I was historically really, really, really rough on myself. And then that has just trickled down from there, because once you have that appreciation for yourself, you can see it in other people. And so it affects every life you touch.
It does. It starts with you, and that will affect how you show up, how you interact, the kind of energy you attract, all of that. It's all connected. Thank you for addressing that. We are down to the rapid fire. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
I'm going to go with meditation. I'm still improving my meditation practice, but when I do it, it's amazing. Nature. I love reading. snuggling my cat. I love my cat, and art. Anything creative, just any kind of art. I love art.
Okay. And how you want to 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Ease is my word of the year. So ease, flow, abundance, creative, and passion. I'm going with passion.
I like that. Very good.
Throw something spicy in there.
There you go. Absolutely. Keeps life spicy and exciting. You got to have that. You got to have passion. Or just things just go along and get boring. I love that. All right. Erin, let's let people know how they can find you, what you offer, anything you want to share. And like I said earlier, this will be on our resources page at embracinglayers.com. But share right now while you're with us all that you have available to people.
The best way to connect with me is through my website, which is at erincopelan.com. That's Erin with an E, Copelan, no D. And there's a resources page. So there's access to my book. I've got a patient handbook. I've got free downloads, information on the new spring program will be coming up on there soon. Different ways to connect with me. All my socials are on there. And I'm always open to people emailing me if something resonated with one of your listeners and they want to explore it more, have a question, or want to share an experience. They're absolutely welcome to share that with me.
Okay. All right. Erin, thank you so much for what you do in the world, the difference you're making for people going through this experience, being willing to take this experience. I think it's sometimes, we just get through something that takes so much, such a toll that you just want to just want to move forward with this and move on with my life. And you are doing that. You are moving forward, but you're also being a resource to people, and you didn't have to do that. And I think it's a lot of compassion and empathy, and you taking a tough situation and deciding you're going to help make it more palatable, more healthy for others. And that's a really beautiful thing. And I appreciate that and your willingness to do that for the world. This is something that, it's one of those things we got to talk about more, and people know there's places to go, that there's places to reach. They don't have to do this alone. I think is so important, because it can feel like an isolating, lonely road. So thank you for being a resource for all caregivers out there. Audience, if this resources and information is going to be helpful, you might not need it now, but you might need it later. You might have a friend that needs it. So go to that. Take good care of yourself. Make space for the little things. Celebrate those little victories. I'm going to try to do this better as well. I'm telling you all to do it. I need to do it too. And know that you're valuable and worthy of that, regardless of this scenario you're in. And it's okay to sit in your car and scream, sing, and cry and play drums on your steering wheel. Those are all acceptable ways. And if that's what you need, you do that. And that can be, drink your water, make sure you're fed, and do those things. Those things matter and they add up. But be kind to yourself. Be gracious with yourself and with others when you have those interactions that indicate they might be having a bumpy time as well. But Erin, thanks again for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure to spend this time with you.
Absolutely. All right, Feel Podcast audience, take good care of yourself and each other and have a great week.